pull up a chair, sit there, be at eye level, because you are physically removing that dichotomy of power. You're making them a little bit less intimidated. And immediately, patients thought that the doctor was in there in the room with them more than double the amount of time they had thought prior to. People are sitting there staring at themselves 24/7 on Zoom. And so I think there became a bit of this, people just kind of got tired of like the hyperfixation of any tiny little flaw that they were faced with 24/7. I talk about the concept of being loyal beyond reason. So to me, there's like, you can have an exceptional experience, but to really build that loyalty, there has to be a connection or an emotional sort of a feeling that it evokes and something that really impacts you.
Zenoti presents Growth Diaries, the fascinating stories behind the best brands in beauty, wellness, and fitness. Hosted by Sudheer Koneru.
What if self-care wasn't just a luxury, but a lifestyle? For Emily Fernandez, co-founder and vice president of brand and client experience at Evolve MedSpa, this idea became her mission. Since launching Evolve in 2020, Emily has built an award-winning brand that helps people feel confident and empowered through personalized client-first care. Evolve MedSpa has become more than a med spa. It's a lifestyle brand, offering services like injectables, laser hair removal, skin rejuvenation. Evolve combines science and art to deliver luxury, tailored experiences that empower clients. This client-centric approach, led by Emily, has resulted in numerous awards, such as the Hoboken Girl Best of Jersey City Award, 3 years in a row. Today, Emily joins us to share the role a client-centric approach plays in building an empire and her take on marketing in today's day and age. We'll dive into her vision for Evolve, as well as how she's redefining self-care in the modern world. So welcome to Growth Diaries, Emily, and thanks for making the time.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So before we get into the whole Evolve MedSpa story, I mean, you had a whole corporate career. I think just summarizing briefly about your corporate background and how it may have been relevant before, and then we can get into Evolve. I thought it would be good.
I worked in straight up hospital-based healthcare my entire adult life until we opened up Evolve. So I kind of worked my way through college and I took classes whenever I could afford to, but I worked in hospitals since I was 18 years old, and that suddenly became a career. And next thing you know, I'd done a lot of different types of things, anything non-clinical. So I worked in marketing, business development, a lot of operations heavy type roles. And my most recent role prior to co-founding Evolve was as the patient experience officer for a 3-hospital healthcare system with a medical group as well. So a lot of learnings around the sort of healthcare space, but also around operations, marketing, patient experience. So it kind of gave me a lot of the skill sets needed to start a business. But it was kind of a surprise. The whole opening of Evolve was not something I'd really thought about prior to.
So you did have good experience with all the notion of experience, the flow of customer journey, and then the marketing aspects and the medical care, I guess.
Absolutely.
And your husband was also into medicine, is a doctor. So
OBGYN doctor, correct.
So both of you are pretty comfortable. You had a good job and this is a good role. So tell me now, how did the trigger towards Evolve MedSpa roots of starting it, how did it happen?
Sure. So my husband, one of the things I love about him, he's a naturally curious person. So he loves to learn. So he got to a certain point in his career where he was like, like, I just feel like I'm a mechanic. I'm just doing the same 3 things all the time. So we started learning how to do some elements of Botox and filler and some small aesthetic procedures, but he was doing them in his OBGYN office. In an OB office, you have pregnant women, you have sometimes people with GYN-based cancers, you have some more serious type things, and then you have your aesthetic clients sitting in the same waiting room. So it was never really an ideal experience. And so again, since that's what I'm really passionate about is that patient experience piece, we decided we were going to just purchase a small office right across the street from where we live because we're lazy. And we were going to just go back and forth, still work full time, but then, make it a fully experiential, type of experience for the patients. So would come in, they could choose their own music. The whole space was just for them, no waiting area, just all centered around them. And then COVID hit. And everything changed like it did throughout the world. We are in the New York metro area, and we work in the New York metro area. So we got hit particularly hard. All of the things you saw in the news were true. I did a supply swap with somebody, a colleague of mine in the Bronx, and it was like an actual war zone. So it was a scary time. And, my kids were home, they were homeschooled, and we had to make a change. So one of us had to sort of focus on the family. And so I decided that I would try my hand at making this a real business instead of just something that was more of a hobby for the two of us to engage in.
So I guess, your roots of really being passionate about your guest experience. You told your husband it's not a great experience for people in the hospital to mix all these spokes. And
Absolutely
that
not.
kind of is the origin of saying, because not everybody has a keen sense of the experience of people
Right.
waiting, but that was a good point. Great. And so if that was across the home, so how did you go about once you decided, I mean, of course, it was a tough time right after COVID to say, let's go start a business when people are
Right.
talking about, I don't want to sign any lease, I don't want to do anything. And how did you go about getting your first proper store to start?
So it was, we already had the space because we had purchased it when we were just going to do one patient at a time after hours. So we had the space, we had the accounts set up. One of the, and I hate to say anything was lucky about COVID, but there were 2 things that made it a little bit easier for us as a point of entry. The first one was one of our co-founders, Austin, is one of the most talented injectors, but even more importantly, one of the most incredible clinical trainers in the industry, hands down. She was furloughed, so we were able to talk to her and say, hey, come join us. That was really, I'd say, a big turning point because she already had a book of business. She already was established in the industry, and she could help us from the clinical parts that I could not do. And then the second thing is, as horrible as it sounds, once everybody was home, and where our location is, it's a small city, and people are in apartment buildings for the most part. So you have people in apartments homeschooling their kids on Zoom 24 hours, people competing over, internet space. And it was just a really difficult time. And people are sitting there staring at themselves 24/7 on Zoom. And so I think there became a bit of this, people just kind of got tired of like the hyperfixation of any tiny little flaw that they were faced with 24/7. But the challenges with that, for me, it felt particularly wrong to start marketing. And, as a new business, that's what you need to do. You need to really engage in marketing. So rather than doing a big push for the marketing piece, all that I did was figure out who is the biggest influencer in this market. And it turned out to be a local influencer who was kind of like just a resource for where to go for what in the city that we opened it. And, I paid for just a sponsored article. Let's really hone in on who we are, why we're doing this, and tell our story, as opposed to, deals, promos, and doing the kind of traditional forms of marketing that we would have engaged in otherwise. And it really hit, here it is now, internet usages and online social media, people are hungry for it and they're constantly consuming it. And so we just, we really had a lot of great traction just from that simple engagement. It was a very kind of confined market. And that was sort of how we started from our marketing perspective.
Great. It's very interesting what you just said. I didn't realize nobody flagged this to me. But because of Zoom, you're right, that even I see myself on the screen, right? Then I see, okay, am I okay? Am I presentable for the call? Because normally when you go into a meeting, you're not very present before COVID, you just go into an office and you're
Right.
just like sitting. Now people are a little more conscious here,
Yep.
right, about that. Yeah.
I actually had to turn my own camera, like I had to put my little face off, like so I don't see it because I will fixate on it. I'll sit there and try. I had to stop.
Cool. So you started off with a focus on injectables, and I do know that there are some others who also saw the opportunity as being fairly big. But how did you evolve the set of services you offered? What was guiding you to say, where do you go from there?
First of all, I love that you just used evolve, which is our name. So intentional or not, I'll take it.
That's good.
We, like any business, we made good decisions and we made not great decisions for the business. So we started to, as we expanded, our initial space was smaller than this room. It was 400 square feet. It was teeny. We weren't equipped to be able to do things like laser where you can't have windows. So it wasn't until we started expanding, which actually it boggles my mind now. It was 3 months after we opened our first 4 months technically, when we officially opened the doors for our second location. So within 4 months, we found a lease, built out the space, did all of this stuff. But it was once we hit that point that we kind of considered doing these other types of services. And the vendors came and everybody's got the latest and the greatest. And we fell for some stuff that worked and we fell for some stuff that didn't. So we did kind of get a little bit heavy in different types of multiple different types of laser or device-based. And then we really took a data-driven approach. So then we sat down and back before we joined Zenoti, that was very manual. So we had to, spreadsheet on spreadsheet on spreadsheet. And we really tried to figure out the root cause for what do the people at each one of these centers, what do the majority need? What's the age range? What's the ask? What's the need? What are the concerns? And then from there, just whittling down what our service offerings were. So we never got into the Ozempic phase, which I know is very lucrative for some practices, but it was not the direction that we wanted to go in. It's different. There's a medical management component that we, decided to kind of opt out of because we were not equipped to safely manage people's blood work and all the other things that go into that. So we do have devices, but we've kind of reined in and refined what we really focus on.
If you're enjoying the show, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute and it helps others find the podcast. You can also follow along on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. So one of the things I know you are passionate about in terms of course, the whole notion of experience and client experience is important to you, and you have this, I'm sure, but you also have a notion of a client-centric approach. And I wanted you to expand, what do you mean by client-centric?
My favorite question in the world. I think that it starts from a general understanding that it's a universal truth. This has nothing to do with business. People want to feel a part of something. They want to feel special. They want to feel engaged. They want to feel good about themselves. And so in medicine, I spent a lot of time really understanding small, teeny tiny nuances that would help people feel more comfortable being honest, because the more educated, the more engaged patients are, there is that strong correlation, direct correlation with that and outcomes. So medical outcomes, people do better. That's why HCAHPS exist in the healthcare requirement for that patient experience survey. It is very, very important. And so finding tiny little ways to improve the way people feel and how open they will be will make a big difference. So for example, if I would spend a lot of time with doctors, always with doctors, but I would say, okay, so let me just sit in on your intake and just listen to them asking the questions. And they stand over a patient, and they have their white coat and they're a little bit brisk and they're, okay, so how much do you smoke? How many drinks do you have a day? And people don't answer honestly. And these things are really important because their medical management depends on that honesty. But the dichotomy of power is so skewed that you're not setting an experience where the patient feels comfortable, even though they know that it's really important to properly give this information. So we would work on tiny little things, like I would say during discharge, instead of, it's actually my favorite exercise. I still use this a lot now, but when you go in to discharge a patient, usually doctors would come in, they've got a handful of papers, and they say, okay, so I need you to make an appointment with a cardiologist. I need you to follow up with your primary care. You're going to need to do this. I want you to go get this blood work. You're going to start on these 3 medications, and they're just rattling off information. They hand them the paper and say, okay, any questions? And that's it. And so I started doing a study where I would ask the patients how long they thought the doctor was there, and to repeat back to me what those discharge instructions were. So it would start with, I would just watch them, I would time them, they would go in, they'd do their typical thing, I would time it, I'd go back in, I'd ask the questions. And then I would say to the physicians, listen, do 2 different things. That's all I'm asking. No extra time. I want you to have a pen, a pencil, a highlighter, a marker, anything that as you're going through the instructions, you circle, you underline the really important things that you went through. That's one thing. Second thing, pull up a chair, sit there, be at eye level, because you are physically removing that dichotomy of power. You're making them a little bit less intimidated. And immediately, patients thought that the doctor was in there in the room with them more than double the amount of time they had thought prior to. And they were able to, even if they weren't able to repeat it perfectly, they were able to navigate the discharge instructions well enough to know what they had to do, which is ultimately, that's the most important thing. So taking that and applying that to the aesthetic industry, same thing. We don't do white coats. I know some people do, and it works for those businesses. We want to really, every way that we interact, we want to feel like your best friend who's in the industry. We don't want you to feel intimidated, because what I don't think a lot of people, and I think this is one of the things that does make Evolve very special, is people don't realize that sometimes you're very vulnerable when you have to put words to your physical insecurities. And so the more comfortable you can make people feel, the better you're going to get that interaction and really know how to treat them, because they're more likely to give you the feedback you need to make good decisions for them. So by fixating on, how clients feel, how they interact, small things like, rather than saying, I have dark circles under my eyes, rather than saying, you have, dark circles, instead taking that and saying, your eyes are so beautiful. Why don't we just, do X, Y, and Z? And that will really make them pop. Things that make you feel good, not bad. And that sells. I know a lot of, I know the act of like kind of praying into the insecurities, that sells too. It's just not the way we sell.
That's a good point. I mean, I think enabling people to express themselves safely in a safe zone, so that then you can actually make them feel good, because you're going to solve the actual problem they have. I mean, it's interesting. But that sounds theoretically very nice. I mean, I agree with you completely. But today you run 15 locations. How do you make sure 15 locations are going to do that? I mean, I thought usually people train them and saying, okay, now you do the injectable, go get it done. Now, what do you do to make sure your belief system is being followed?
Oh, great question. I love that. I would say the first thing, so before we expanded from the first center to the second, because I've worked in the HCAPS world where you take these systemized patient experience questions and you convert them into actions. So the first thing we did was we interviewed everybody. We asked all the questions. We went through all of our reviews, and we engaged in a really, we were like, listen, we'll give you a free service if you answer the survey, because we really wanted good insights into what our clients liked, why we were surviving during COVID when other businesses were failing. What was it that was really connecting? And taking that, and then what we did was we created our core values and our company culture. And I know it sounds silly. I know a lot of people talk about culture and it's a buzzword, but we really take it very seriously. And so we kind of created like, what are the core values that we expect from our employees? Passion and curiosity are 2 of them. We really want to make sure that we're able to scale appropriately. So having, a lot of focus on the innovation is a really big piece. But really what we wanted to do is kind of understand everything. So our offices, none of them really, like we really want to be, we celebrate diversity. We want people to still be their unique selves. So that meant we have to show that in everything we do, how we train our staff, how we have access to multiple languages, how we are able to showcase in our marketing. So every little thing we do, we want to make sure we're bringing it in. Even the interior design, we use like a mix of materials. No center looks exactly the same. We infuse different things from the communities because we want to really practice what we preach. But that act of really focusing on, before you expand, who we are even and what we value, I think made a very big difference. So even when we're hiring candidates, we are evaluating them on our core values. Are they accountable? Are they passionate? Are they naturally curious? And that's sort of how we navigate the world. When the executive team, when we put together our goals, we have to link it to our core values and make sure that we're not kind of going rogue. So I do think that makes a difference if the company is committed to living by that. So I know there's a lot of like, people think that it's silly having that core culture, but if you really do live by it and you talk about it and you reward your staff for it, it will become ingrained.
Cool. In fact, tomorrow you're going to hear Dave Mortensen talk, and he talks about saying values is the way he built his company.
I'm very excited about that.
So it is definitely true. And I think I love the notion of this curiosity concept, right? Because I think very often people ask a question for the sake of asking because you've told them, okay, ask these 4 questions and then here's the treatment plan and you're going to go. But if you're really curious, you're going to listen to that answer and you're going to lean into that answer and try to understand. And so I think if we can hire people who can actually lean into what the client is saying versus just following some playbook you laid out,
Exactly.
So great. So you've obviously grown your business quite a bit in actually a very short span of time, given the spectrum of services you do, because 2020 was COVID, and then from 21 to now you have 15 locations, and most of your locations are in the
New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland.
Cool. So how have you approached the locations that you've opened? Because these are completely your locations. It's not like they're franchise. So you have the choice and the liberty to pick where you want to go. And any advice on how you made those decisions?
The first 3 were easy because I knew the communities.
Yes.
I knew the people. So those 3 were a piece of cake. You kind of get a gut feeling. Yeah. What became difficult was 4 onward. When you're not quite as ingrained in the actual community itself, you don't have that sort of gut reaction. There were a few centers where when I went there, I was like, yes, this is a yes, this will work. But we've also made mistakes. So within the past few years, we've gotten a lot better about leaning into data and being able to better understand sort of, this is our catchment. Let's not try to pretend we're something else that we're not. This is where we're going to be. We're never going to be the super exclusive brand because we want to be accessible to our clients. We're never going to be the cheapest brand that doesn't, we don't want to sacrifice quality for cost. But we want to sort of be in that middle range. And so not every community fits that. And so we have made mistakes. We have had to close some offices, which was very sad because, you put so much into it and you want to really make everything you do very successful. But now that we're leaning a lot more into the data piece, it has become a lot easier. But I will say there is nothing that is that gut feeling. I would never go into anything completely blind. I still want to understand the community. I still want to sort of understand the people and make sure that it feels right, because that it's the one thing you can't get from data. It's the one thing in this world, that kind of gut reaction. So yeah, it is difficult, but really understanding who we are and what our clientele is. So looking at our data and then lining it up with, the data we get from Buxton or any other resource or surveying. That's kind of where we're at right now.
And I think you're right. Even I feel the same. Like I live in Mercer Island, so Bellevue, Seattle, these areas I have a general vibe and pulse of.
Right.
Even if I go a little outside, like go outskirts, Kent and other areas, I'd be like, I don't know how the community there is. I've got to go learn about it. And I think the first 2-3 years you said would be easy. So When you open these locations, how do you approach marketing to ensure, you get the first wave of people going? You've been, of course, had a rich career in marketing as well. So maybe you should expand on that.
It's tough because it changes. So I really love organic because it feels more brand aligned. It's very authentic. So when you're doing, organic based marketing, whether it's social media, blogs, anything that gives information, that's my bread and butter. That's what I love. That being said, I'm a firstborn daughter. I kind of have this like perfectionism. Like I want to know my results have really yielded what I want. So I do get a little nervous with brand marketing, oddly. I feel like, you're kind of like sometimes you're throwing money out and you're hoping it sticks, and sometimes it does. But performance-based marketing, where you can actually evaluate every campaign, do your A/B testing, really understand what image resonates, what verbiage resonates. That's pretty cool. And then, making the decisions down the line. Like one direction that we've been moving toward is looking again at our own data, which Zenoti has been instrumental in, by the way. It's because we have the access to this information that we're able to make better marketing decisions. But now we can look at all of our clients. Here's the chief concerns by location that they have. And with those concerns, let's now take those concerns and map it as a cohort and see what really works, because that will help us minimize the spend of marketing. The other thing we're doing is looking at like your first service and tracking that down to see what that lifetime value yields. So having tools through Zenoti, which has been game changing for us, has really helped quite a bit. But also surrounding myself with people who know better than I do. I gave up trying to deal with the marketing myself. We have some talented humans who are doing a fantastic job at it now, but it changes. So you really have to keep on top of it. AI, it's taken over. And it's really funny because even what we found is that people who know that they're dealing with an AI agent, for example, they're fine. But when they think that somebody sounds like they're AI, but they're not, for some reason, they're like, you're trying to trick me. So we have to be we really have to balance a lot of everything, how we project and what we do, and how we use things like AI in this industry with marketing. But yeah, I mean, social media will always reign supreme. That's not going anywhere. But I love organic marketing, giving people information, really working on your website, getting everything into there that can help you to be found. I actually love that.
And, how much focus do you have around, as a business, I don't recollect, around both referrals from within the client base and then reviews management, and how much focus goes into making sure you get these reviews from people?
A decent amount. And again, that's another thing that Zenoti has helped with. So people don't realize it's like very easy to say, hey, give us a review right now. And a lot of people have these QR codes in their offices, but most review sites will actually suppress those because they know they geotag. And if you're reviewing them within the same confines of the location, they're like, okay, they're soliciting the reviews. But by doing these automations, I like an if then. So I want to understand all of the people. I want to capture everything. I don't want to just capture the people who are, a 4 or a 3 and not passionate enough to leave a review, not angry enough to leave an angry review. I want to get that kind of in between so we can actually make improvements. And having Zenoti's feedback loop has been really helpful because it does give us the ability to really assess. But we do tend to ask people for, share your review with us. A lot of times people want a tip. And as medical providers, it's a little bit gray. So we generally are like, what would be even more meaningful? Like, we would love a review. That makes a big difference for us. And so things like that we do try to do. But again, very organic on the review generation. Referrals, we go hard on the referrals. So it is the cheapest, easiest way. And the other thing too, if just from a common sense standpoint, if I'm Googling a service and I'm reading reviews, listening to strangers, that's one thing. I'll come in with some sort of degree of confidence in the place that I select. But if my best friend tells me, oh, you've got to go to Evolve, here's why, I take my wallet. It's all yours. Take everything you want, whatever you tell me, because I've already had that trust established. So really focusing in a little bit more on the organic kind of referrals from other humans that have been a part of the Evolve family, that's where we really tend to focus and do our best.
I like your notion that since you're a medical kind of business and you don't take tips, to convert that into asking if you want to really help. This is what I think that's a very good idea for everybody to try. And then this notion, I always support referrals. I keep telling people this is a service industry, person is in your chair. But a good point you just made, which is when a person comes to you through a referral, they're probably going to trust you so much more and easier to convince to become a customer, to convert, and how much they spend with you may change and what spectrum of services they may choose because they came through a referral versus through an ad kind of thing. Yeah, cool. Great. So coming back to employees, tell me, I mean, is this industry very easy to hire? I mean, how hard do you find? Because one part of me says, oh yeah, it's very easy. It's like these people who are working in hospital systems, stressed out, come have a peaceful job with you.
Yes. So it is difficult. It's because this industry as a whole has boomed and the growth has been really, really incredible to see. That means there's a lot of poaching going on. So even when you have the talent, you're always at risk of losing the talent. So I'd say 5 years ago when we first opened, people were so burnt out. They were physically, I mean, you remember the pictures during COVID with the masks and how they would have all the scars. That was real, that was really a big deal. And people were just very burnt out. And so it was pretty easy in the early stages when we first opened, but then it did get harder. The other thing is where we opened our first center is in one of the most difficult med spa operational states in the country because there are so many restrictions, one of which is that we have to have advanced practice providers. So doctors, nurse practitioners, or PAs. We cannot use RNs unless a physician is physically there at all times. So that increases kind of the price tag, so to speak, of the talent, and it also limits your talent pool quite a bit. So even we had some really talented from New York City, our first location, talented injectors with experience, but they were an RN, and we knew we didn't have a physician in-house 24/7, so we had to pass on that. That being said, what we have that most people don't is my co-founder, Austin. Austin is she is the yin to my yang. She is perfect partner for me in every way, but she is a great injector. She's well known in the industry. She's a national trainer for many brands, including Galderma. And she is one of the best, and I say this with complete confidence, clinical trainers in the world. She is phenomenal. So we were able to take advantage of people with no experience. They had the credentials and they had the passion, the curiosity, all of the other kind of core values that we focus on. We knew we could still be very successful. And actually, like most of our providers, our first clinical hire, she is monumentally successful. And she had no experience. She was straight out of PA school. She had done some rotations in the industry, but that was it. So she's somebody who was built, her talent was built from scratch, and she is in every way just leaps and bounds. Her clients will come no matter when, no matter where, coming from Texas, from all over the place to come still stay with her. So that's a really big advantage, the fact that we can focus on the right person instead of the experience, I think has really helped us quite a bit because the right person with the right amount of curiosity will be good. If they have the skill sets, you have to have good hands too. I mean, we found actually NICU nurses do really well, teeny tiny little babies and, tiny injection points. So they have the fairy fingers, I think we call that. But I think that's the reason that we've been able to grow the way we have in spite of some of the recruiting challenges.
Cool. And it's an interesting point you bring out, that is, I've found many successful business at your kind of a stage, which have grown organically, have two people who are instrumental in running the thing. Looks like between you and Austin, there is that combination where she's very technical and all the science, your operations and marketing, and really focus on the experience of people who come in. If you're enjoying the show, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute and it helps others find the podcast. You can also follow along on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, she's the yin to my yang. She's great. She also is, I'm very, I want everything to be perfect. I suffer from perfection. So I really want to, like, the pros and the cons. Even packing a suitcase is ridiculous. I'm like, what if? And so everything I do is kind of on the what if spectrum, which makes me good at certain elements of like operations marketing. But I'm not an ideas person. I need somebody who can kind of jumpstart the ideas. She is driven on passion, ideas, curiosity. Like, she is just this sort of, high level thinker that, sometimes she's just like, what if we did this? And I'm like, that's crazy. And other times she's like, what if we did this? And I'm like, that's brilliant. So we do have a really great balance. And right now our executive team is composed of 4 people, and we are actually a rule by committee. So we do not have an official CEO, which is kind of cool because we all represent different facets of the business. And, we have one person, his area is finance. Austin is over anything clinical and training. I have anything operational and experiential. One person is data analytics and strategic growth. So we all kind of come together, and it's a different model, but it works really well for us. And mostly because we complement each other's deficiencies, frankly.
That's a nice concept to have 4 people as a committee and not a CEO. It's a good thing. Let's see how long it goes. At some point, you may need to change that. But interesting, you talked about the attention to detail and what if kind of scenarios, right? So I'm sure your kids may have a hard time with that because you're probably mapping out all the time. What if something could go wrong?
Yes and no. Actually, as a parent, I'm zen on certain things and I'm a little psycho on the others because I know I will anticipate needs. So, and my kids joke about it. They'll test me. They're like, hey, do you have a Band-Aid, 2 Advils, and a Dramamine? I'm like, I sure do. Here you go. So I have a lot of that, and they've learned to be able to navigate life with a safety belt, so to speak. They know that they have a little bit of the freedom because I have a lot of freedom for them to be their own people. But I'm here just in case you fall and scrape your knee or, anything else that you may need. An extra shirt, no problem. Here you go. But it's funny. My business life and my parenting,
No different.
they're different in certain ways, but I do, like, one of my old bosses said this to me, and I know he did not mean it as a positive, but he had said, you run your business team like you're the mom. And I thought about it and I was like, my kids are awesome. That's great. I want to run it like I'm the mom because as a parent, as you have 2 very successful sons. What I think is really important is it's very counterintuitive parenting because it's like you put all of your everything into creating an atmosphere to basically have your kids leave you and be kind of successful on their own separately. And that's sort of what you want. Like, I am most successful and where I feel actually the most professionally gratified is when somebody succeeds without me.
Yes.
That's when I'm like, wow, I did a good job. Good for me and good for them. And I'm super proud. So there are certain things that it's like, that always sticks with me because I think it's so funny because I'm like, kindness and ruling with a way that's like, I'm still building people. It's not that I'm soft. I think people confuse being nice and with being soft. It's easy to not be nice. It's really hard to really focus on, like, if somebody's not succeeding, the question I always have is what can I do better? How do I need to approach this differently? Sometimes people just don't think the way you do. So
cool. So you've been growing the business fairly fast in terms of, or organically building businesses, stores is harder than just going franchising and all that stuff. And so, but in about 4 years, you've had 15 locations and these are meaningful locations. So where do you see the future for Evolve? What is your strategy in terms of how are you going to go forward?
I think the market is changing. So I think the main thing is really making sure that everything we do, we have actual data to interpret, to support, and to grow. I've told you this before, one of the things that I love about being a Zenoti client is that you are growing. And so it helps to support our growth. So if I have an idea, I spoke to my rep recently. I said, listen, here's something that I really want to start focusing on. He's like, great, we'll bring it to the development team. We'll see how we can get this going. So I think, first of all, really just understanding how your vendors, your partners can grow with you does make a big difference. So thank you for building a platform that not only works for us now, but that will be growing with us, embracing different elements that have become pain points. But in terms of like the actual, kind of next steps in the growth journey, while I love the de novo practices, you pick it, you build it, it is expensive. And then you are spending a lot in terms of the marketing to really get those new clients. So it's starting to kind of open ourselves up to potential for mergers or acquisitions with other brands, and thinking about that a little bit differently. Again, being picky though, we don't need to. So it's a nice to have. So we have the advantage of being able to make sure that if we do engage in an acquisition, that it's with a group that shares the same values and has the same kind of core and ability to grow.
And I think given that you bring good operational strength and the whole approach of client-centric approaches and all, I would think any such acquisition you do might translate into better results because of some of the practices you have to put in play. Great. Is there a company that you admire or look up to?
I would say there's two, for two different reasons. I'm going into kind of my emotional piece, which is more on the client-centric end, and then the data piece. You got to give it to Amazon. Amazon knows how to use their data. They know how to fine tune everything I've hovered over, everything I've looked at, and convert that into, this is what her page looks like. This is what we're going to recommend. Here's the push notifications. And every single change, every nuance, like my kids are on my Amazon account now. My Amazon account now compared to 5 years ago, completely different. So the ability to really operationalize the data in a way that's very meaningful, and it's just brilliant. It's really, really good. And it's kind of capturing, people are impatient now. We're the gotta have it now generation, it's like nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants, I like the idea that I can get it now. I can get it to my doorstep. I don't have to go out in the rain. It's just there. But I do have it. It's funny because I use in my orientation, when I onboard new employees, I talk about the concept of being loyal beyond reason. So to me, there's you can have an exceptional experience, but to really build that loyalty, there has to be a connection or an emotional sort of a feeling that it evokes, and something that really impacts you, good or bad. So it can have the opposite effect too. And so the one that I have that I use all the time when I onboard, as an example, is actually Nordstrom. So my mom was 17 when she had cancer the first time. So she had a really odd nerve sheath ending, and she was paralyzed as long as I've been alive in one of her legs. So she always had to wear this brace on one of her legs. She is all of 5 feet tall. I know I am not, but she is the teeniest, cutest little thing. So her foot size to accommodate the brace was a lot bigger than the other foot. And when we were young, my parents were college kids when I was born. They were very young. We didn't have the resources. She would either buy 2 pairs of terrible shoes that didn't last long, didn't really work, or she would try to squeeze or fit the one pair of shoes when she was a size and a half to 2 sizes different. And so the first time we went to Nordstrom, I was a little bit like, I don't know if we can afford this. This is a kind of a lot. But they, I noticed kind of the people, place, and process. I always talk about that when you're looking at a service-based industry. Unlike an Amazon, you have a place that's sensory-driven. The people, that's the customer service. That's what people usually think of with client experience or guest experience. And then you have the operations, which is secretly my favorite. And what was really interesting was the, place was great. They had enough seats so she could actually sit and have a little bit of compassion when she was trying on different shoes. But when we explained the situation, the salesperson said, great, I want you to look at the shoe that fits what you want. Forget price, I'll find something that will, fit your price point. But let me go talk to my manager, I'll be right back. She comes back and she says, listen, we're just going to sell you one pair of shoes. We'll just use the other ones as display items, but we really want to make sure that you're able to get a pair of shoes that lasts and that you'll feel good in. And that kind of rocked my world. I'd never seen anything like that before. But the funny thing is, what down the line, as we're like, okay, this is our spot. This is where we're going. It has been replicated at every single Nordstrom that we've gone to. So that is process. That's a lot of they're enabling their employees and training their employees to make a difference to people. And that's really cool. So those are my two kind of aspirational for very different reasons.
And you said your first time in Seattle, so you're at the home of Amazon and Nordstrom.
Exactly. Isn't that something? I didn't even realize that.
You should go see the Sphere or something. I think Amazon has this place where, eco-friendly.
So funny. Very good point.
Cool. And in terms of talking about books, is there a book that has stood out among things that you read in the past?
I'm a fiction reader. So I know that the right answer is very business focused. I like fiction. I love Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison is one of my all-time favorite books. I read it at least every other year. I think I get something new out of it every time. It's beautiful. I love, oh gosh, so many. There's so many wonderful ones. I actually love Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. It's just I read it in high school and I was just so floored by how much he went into the psyche of somebody and sort of the factors that went into that I just was really impressed with that. That's another one I tend to revisit. But it's funny because I was always a very introverted child. I still am secretly, but I hide it now. And I was reading at a young age and I would just sit in a nook and read. I'd climb a tree and I'd read. I'd sit on a fire escape and read. And a lot of people, it's reading, unlike any other form of medium, you don't just read about what people are saying or what you see, but you're actually kind of getting an insight into the way people think and the way they feel. And I think that really builds very empathetic people, because when you realize there's so much more than what you're seeing kind of on the surface and that you can deduce from everyday interactions, and there's this whole other world that they're living or challenges that they're dealing with, I think that actually really creates very empathetic and well-rounded people as a whole. That was really important to me that my kids read fiction, because the ability to, and it's funny, what they gravitate toward is very different from what I gravitate toward, but it does help to kind of build that understanding of the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what you are very passionate about, understanding people, human behavior and human reactions. So fiction and reading about empathy and connecting with people is more relevant, I guess. Very interesting for you. And cool. So in terms of, one thing I want to know was if I were to ask you, why should someone choose Evolve Med Spa? What would you say?
I would say we have the best for the least, which I know is not the best tagline. It's why I don't do marketing anymore. But we really focus on the skill set of the providers. So everything is anticipated. Like my purse, everything is anticipated. All of the needs are kind of there. The skill sets of the providers are top notch. We take this very, very seriously because I'm in, healthcare background. Everything is based on, the best in terms of making sure it's clean, it's sterile, it's safe. I do a lot with root cause analysis, just like I would in a hospital situation. In a hospital, you have your RCA committees, and you look at all of your adverse events, and you assess, and you have focus groups and make the improvements. We don't, luckily, knock on wood, we don't really have a lot of adverse events, but any feedback that's not perfect, we evaluate, we review, we figure out, is it a one-time thing? What was kind of the root cause? Always understanding the why. So the fact that we're always focused on making it the best that it can be from an experiential standpoint, from a safety standpoint, I think that's one of the main differentiators. It's also cool. People enjoy it. It doesn't have the typical feel. It's not like sitting in a medical office. People have said things like, I love the vibe. Everybody's so cool. Like, these are my friends. I want to hang out with them. And again, there's a significant business reason why we want it to feel like that. but it's kind of nice, like our teams like each other. They, the clients kind of match. So it's always you're much more likely to make an appointment if you enjoy talking to somebody and being there with them. But we do also really try to manage our cost. So anytime we get, we have grown big enough now that we can provide services at a lower cost because our costs have reduced. We pass that along to the clients because we know how much competition there is out there. We want that access, and we don't want people to break their banks to get something that, is in their best interest.
Sounds good. And then, so in this industry, of course, we're all about, like you're talking about clients, taking care of clients, making them feel good, and, and all that. But how do you take care of your own personal wellness?
Not really good at that, to be honest. Oof. I need to get better at that. It's definitely something I need to do. I need to make doctor's appointments like a grown-up. I would say I am, because I am naturally very introverted, but when I'm around people, I enjoy people so very much and I want to give them my best, but then I'm exhausted. So I have had to learn that I have an on switch and an off switch, and I have to respect that off switch. And so when I am off, I want to sit in a room, I want to read a book. I don't want to, I don't need any extra stimuli. And so being able to respect that off switch, I think, and just realize it's okay. I don't always have to. My kids are older too now, so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I do need to do better at that. I'm not good at that.
Cool. Yeah, but I think the concept of just being present to the off switch and saying, okay, this window I'm going to switch off is actually can be healing in many ways. So people don't use that time otherwise. They're always wired up and bang, they go to bed and wake up and again wired up kind of thing. Yeah. So everybody talks about impact of AI. Of course, I talk about AI technology and software, but how do you view it affecting the client experience and the services you offer using AI going forward?
So one thing that's interesting when my daughter's looking at colleges. So we're on this kind of what career do you choose? Service-based industries are safe. And it's one of the few things in this kind of, nobody really knows where this is going to go, but service-based industries are still here to stay. So making sure that kind of human element in the environment, they're still coming in. Somebody has to inject you. You still have to be greeted. That piece, I think, is pretty protected from, being outsourced to AI. But what has really helped us, and what I think we're going to lean a lot more into, is that AI can help from an operational piece. It can help us to make better business decisions that can help us to focus once we have that human in the office, focus on their experience and help to personalize it. So one thing, for example, that we want to lean into a little bit more, we know what concerns will match what types of services, and we know what our contraindications are. So let's say we have somebody whose concern is rosacea, but they are also, they have melasma as well. We are not going to recommend IPL because of the melasma risk. So we have all of this mapped. So being able to kind of leverage AI to help make some of these predictions, to help the clients to even set the stage for what they should anticipate or what treatment options are available to them, is a really big piece of it. Our phones are ringing off the hook all the time. I need help. And we've tried a call center. I really love that Zenoti now has this new virtual agent, and I have tried it and it is wild. I tried it in English. I tried it in Spanish.
Yeah.
It is really incredible because you get all of the information without needing to really heavily rely on interrupting the experience when the people are physically in the center. I want my staff to focus on everybody that walks in that door. I don't want them to have to say, give me a second, and really have to facilitate that. So I think leaning into the positives of AI while still making sure we're retaining that human touch when they're physically in the center is going to be really important for us. And we're really thankful to have you as our partners because of that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, I mean, of course, the point around the client's services and how AI can help, predict what's appropriate and recommend, et cetera, is good. But even I think of the same thing, which is this industry is very secure, service industry, stories, personal connections, the bond. It's human-centric stuff. But AI can take off all the mundane stuff so people get to excel at what they do, which is helping people when they're in front of you to feel, wonderful when they walk out. So
It's great. It's brilliant. I'm glad that you've created this.
Yeah.
And also multiple languages.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't necessarily have to rely on our staff to speak every language. We're in one of the most diverse areas in the world. And so to be able to tap into that, people can really communicate.
Great. So thanks a lot, Emily, for making the time to be part of this, and wonderful hearing and learning about your passion around this whole, which is fairly unique among businesses I've talked to, which is the client-centric approach and really thinking about the client experience and how they feel, how they experience the engagement inside your business. So
Thank you.
Thanks for all the tips.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I love watching to see what the next new development for Zenoti that'll be able to bring to the table will be.
Yeah. Thanks.
Growth Diaries is brought to you by Zenoti.